Most things in this world are 80-20. 80% of us agree, 20% of us are on the extremes and outliers. The same is for politics, but it seems like all we ever talk about are the outliers. We talk about the extremes. Why aren't we talking about what we all agree on? Why don't we ever make laws on what we all agree on anymore? Welcome to Into the Desert, exploring the wilderness of ideas. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to support our mission of encouraging discussion and not division, please join us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Elgin, if we look at this world, everything that we do, we can mostly agree. We can find common ground in almost everything. Stephen Covey wrote an entire book, The 7 Habits, and he talks about how we should just find common ground, find those win-win situations. But politics doesn't do that. It's so frustrating that it's either you're black or you're white when everything in this world is shades of gray. Why don't we ever talk about that middle ground? Why aren't laws done around that 80% anymore?
Well, one of the issues is that we don't discuss things. We yell at each other. And as I said before, democracy demands a discussion. And if your sole goal is to defeat the other side, then you'll never have that discussion. You'll never have the open, honest discussion that you need. There's another factor as well, which is politicians actually don't make a lot of the decisions any longer. We have what's called the administrative state. If you remember the progressives of the early 20th century in America, one of their principles was to get a lot of the decisions and a lot of the things that government does away from politics and into what they call administrative state. They believed in administrators, not in politicians. The people sort of give them broad guidance of what to do, but the actual details and the actual rules, what we would call regulations, are done by the administrators. And so this was a fairly conscious effort. And you see over the 20th century, the role of administrators got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the role of politicians, and thus the people, got smaller and smaller. So by the time we get to the end of the 20th century, the politicians really don't have a lot of laws that they pass. Most of the laws are actually called regulations, and they're passed by the administrative state. So they're not accountable to the people. You can't really fire government workers. And so nothing really much happens other than what the administrators want to happen.
So, when you're talking the administrative state, what exactly are we talking about? I mean, are we talking about things like the Department of Education and the Department
Mm-hmm.
of Homeland Security?
Oh, yeah.
If we're running these governments by these administrative entities, why don't we get to elect those representatives? Why are we electing people that aren't really doing anything anymore?
Well, this was the whole idea of the progressives, is you wanted to get those away from the politicians and away from politics. And so it was sort of, you're just going to do what the administrators say. They could make these supposedly rational decisions. One of the problems with the progressive theory is they had this vision of the completely objective, nonpartisan administrator, which we know that that's not true. There's no such thing as a completely nonpartisan person. We see this in local elections where we have nonpartisan mayors. Great idea, except that they're really Democrats or Republicans, but they're just pretending to be nonpartisan and they're not running and telling you who they really are. So the whole concept of the administrative state is a myth because you never get the nonpartisan. It's like the District of Columbia, since given their right to vote in presidential elections, they have not once voted for Republican. They always vote for the Democrats. And yet these are supposed to be the nonpartisan people, the people who run our government.
Yeah, it reminds me of this idea that you have a king who's enlightened by God. And so they're this holy entity that's just so wonderful and will always do the right thing. And yet history has shown the opposite. I mean, even in the Bible, when you look at somebody like King David, who did a lot of wonderful things and was blessed by God, even he made some really bad mistakes.
A few. Well, even in the secular world, you have Marcus Aurelius, who wrote a fabulous book called Meditations that if you've not read, I highly recommend you read it. But he was a good emperor and probably the last good emperor because he was followed by Commodus, which is one of the worst emperors. So, those were mythically done in the movie Gladiator. But the problem is, you can if you get a good king, and the good kings in history are few and far between. They're almost always followed by a bad one, and the bad one can undo the all the good much quicker than the good can actually get the place turned around. It's easier to destroy than it is to create.
So, one final question. How do we get back to having discussions and being able to rule and create laws that 80% of America will agree with?
Well, this is something that individuals do on their own. You have to make a decision that you are going to try and talk to the other side. It's going to be hard. You got to find somebody on the other side who's willing to talk, and then you've got to actually engage in the conversation. And if you're in the habit of demonizing and denouncing the other side, that's going to be, it's going to be hard to learn a new habit of listening and countering particular arguments than calling people a racist or a Nazi or a communist.
Well, tell us what you think in the description. Do you think the administrative state has ruined the ability to create laws that we all would agree with? Or do you think this idea of arguing the extremes is beneficial? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for listening.